modernize the electoral process. And based on Sir Dennis Byron's findings, there are 6 points that I really would like to touch on. And the first one is denying Dominicans born in Dominica, residing abroad, the right to vote. I've known quite a bit of Dominicans in the US, Canada, England, even Guadeloupe and Martinique, Barbados. They work in Barbados or the US, they build their homes here, they have their cars here, they pay their license, they pay their insurance here, and some of them even they contribute to our social security. That tells you that they have a plan to retire in Dominica. And you are saying now that we should deny these people the right to exercise their franchise to vote, so that when they come back, they cannot ask a question about what happened to their money in the banks, or even their social security, pension scheme. They cannot get anything back from the contribution they made. I really don't understand why this is really even an issue, because as long as you're a Dominican and you're registered, you should be allowed to remain on the voters list, and you should be allowed to vote whenever an election is called. The idea of the 90 days or 50 days, I cannot support that. I don't agree to that. As long as you're registered, you should be allowed to vote. So once you're registered, you should be allowed to vote, and removing your name from the list is not an option, because this is a very sensitive issue. And people are just listening and watching and to see what would be the outcome of that move. So I want to tell every single one of you here to please support the fact that the voters that are registered should remain on the list, because that will be chaos and confusion. If people who are living outside of Dominica, contributing to Dominica, is not allowed to vote in Dominica, that would be very bad for us. For example, if you look just in the town of Portsmouth, which is north of here, we have the Catholic Church. It's still under construction, but usable. And I can tell you, 75% of the finances that built the church came from diasporans. We had a Portsmouth, New York group who was keeping tea parties and sending money down to contribute towards the construction of the church. Now, these people, should they not be allowed to exercise their franchise to vote in Dominica? I think they should. Okay, the next idea, and I don't want to call this points because it's an idea. Somebody just fall asleep, wake up, they dream, and come up with an idea, a suggestion, and then they figure that because they hold a certain position in society, and they say you should run, you shouldn't look back, you should just run, even if you're going to run over a cliff. It is very good to make changes. And I welcome the idea of the modernization, because there are little tweaks and peaks that we need to do to the electoral process. But I want to impress upon your mind that is not every change that you make is good. Okay? So we have to be mindful of the changes that we make. The idea of fingerprinting came about to build a background check on criminals. That's why fingerprint came about. So you have a history, a criminal history. Scientists take it further and took it to put in the workforce and stuff like this. But there are a lot of intricacies with the fingerprinting. Now, the voting process involves every sane and able-bodied individual. Now, if you allow people to be fingerprinted for voting, what would happen to somebody who happened to, unfortunately, get themselves in an accident and lost both hands? Are you going to tell them, well, because you don't have a fingerprint, you cannot vote? So I cannot support that. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make no sense at all. That makes no sense at all, at all, at all. So I do not support at all the idea of the fingerprint. The national ID cards, the voter ID cards, no, that doesn't make sense. National ID cards, or whatever you want to call it, as the AG says, that can facilitate you, because it would be a card that is for a multi-purpose card and not something that you will use only for 5 years. And after 5 years, it has expired. And then the process, the financial process, is a very expensive process to print those cards or process those cards every 5 years. Now, instead of the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister think of giving civil servants a little raise of 0.5%, they have to use that money to go and print national ID card, voter ID cards for people to vote once in 5 years. Come on, most of us here are civil servants, or we have family members who are civil servants, and you hear the stories every day about their salaries not even enough. We already have a financial situation. Everything is expensive. Every event that happens in the world is used as a basis to raise prices. I'll tell you, first it was COVID-19, now it's the Ukraine war, then who knows, maybe the African war, which is coming up next, most likely, because we know the African nations are challenging France about the minerals, so there might be a civil war, and people use every opportunity to increase prices. Now, the government has to find resources from where? Limited areas to do projects, to assist students, to build bridges, to assist people who are sick and the family members are unable to help. And then these people are suggesting to the government that they should use that finances or find money to print a voter ID card for 5 years. Where is that money going to come from? And why should the government waste resources on that? So that tells you, ladies and gentlemen, that we shouldn't entrust the governance of the country in the hands of these people, because they're very careless and they are not concerned about your well-being. And that is why I finally understood why in 1995-2000 I worked then as an air traffic controller at the Kingsville Airport and sometimes Melvin Hall. And that is why I understood why my salary was 45 days late and in 2 parts. Because they was using the money for nonsense. So we must be very mindful of that. So I cannot support the idea of a voter ID card. But a national ID card, I fully support. Okay? So, let me see here. Fingerprinting. Okay, campaign financing. Why should the tax, and it sounds like repetition, but these points are burning issues. Why should the government of the day use taxpayers' money to give a bunch of people to run a campaign? And like Mr. Francis said, to come and lie to you. Well, you know what will happen if we agree to that? Let me tell you what will happen. You will not only have 3 candidates going up, you will have about 20 parties going up. And imagine having 20 candidates in 21 constituencies, and the government have to give everybody money. What will happen to your salary as a teacher or as a doctor or as a nurse? Okay? So we cannot support those foolish ideas. Some people believe that because they hold position, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a former prime minister, and I say, I come up with a suggestion, so then you should just go with it. So, and we need to be mindful of those people who use their position to give, to influence us or to mislead us with their suggestions. These are silly suggestions, these are madness. And that is why I will never support and ever support the idea of campaign financing. I cannot support the idea of fingerprinting. I cannot support the idea to deny Dominicans living in their diaspora their right to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morvan. Let's balance it out a little, and we'll take Mr. Clarence in the middle here. Christian.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, Honorable Prime Minister, Cabinet members, Good night, everyone. Really, I did not intend to speak at those consultations. But when I listened last night and the lies that went on, I think I had to come out to give some people the facts. The question is, why are we here today? Why are we here tonight? Why are we here with those consultations? And we are here because an opposition party does not want to accept that it lost consecutive general elections. Elections in Dominica has always been free and fair. The system we have under which we conduct our elections, all major political parties have won elections under the same system. In 1995, an opposition political party with 33% of the total votes cast from the government under the very same system. That opposition party won 11 seats, five of those seats were won on a minority. So if the Freedom Party and the Labour Party had come together into an arrangement to contest those seats, those elections, the then government would not have formed the government because they would have only won 6 seats. That is how robust our election processes be. A political party can win election 11 seats with 33% of the total votes cast. In 2000, the Labour Party contested elections. The Labour Party got 29% of the votes. No. And then with 10 seats, no, it was more than that. It's in 2000, the Labour Party got 29% of the votes in 1995. The Freedom Party got 38% in 1995, and the UWP got 33% in 1995. So you had 67% opposition and 33% government. So we had a South Africa, a minority party in power in Dominica. That was no problem. It was because the election then was free and fair. We heard about campaign financing in 2000, and I heard the chairman of a radio station in the election in 2000, January 2000, who was the general manager of the NDC, the chairman of the Millennium Commission, and the campaign manager of the United Workers' Party. And we're talking about campaign and utilizing government funds. I was the director of audit for Dominica. And I know what happened. I know of the $4 million, 4 million EC dollars from the escrow account at the Royal Bank of Canada, the Economic Citizenship Escrow account from the Royal Bank of Canada. The check was signed by then political advisor of the United Workers' Party, of the Prime Minister, Edward Alexander, and the Financial Secretary. That was to do Millennium Commission. They said they want to do things for the new millennium. And you know what the money was paid for? Many of us here can remember the container of blue chairs for the campaign. This guy, this Sheridan Gregoire, on radio talking about campaign finance, right? Many of us can remember the blue chairs, the container of blue chairs. Many of us can remember the tents purchased. Many of us can remember the stage, and many of us can remember the paying to carry the stage. All these monies came from the funds, with the $4 million which was given to the Millennium Commission. Many of us can remember the use of the government printery to print the opposition party, print the government, the party in government manifesto. Many of us can remember the $20,000 given to a publisher to publish a sports magazine. Up to today, we do not have the sports magazine. And we believe that this was paid for a firm in Barbados to print a part or some of the United Workers' Party manifesto at the time in 2005. But we have a person who was the manager, the campaign manager at that time, coming on radio talking about campaign finance and election is not free and fair. Let me tell people, in 2016 or 2017, we had a government in Bolivia run by Evo Morales, won elections free and fair. The OAS and the US decided the election was stolen, with people in Bolivia campaigned that the election was stolen. It was rigged. You know what happened? The opposition with the army overthrew the government of Bolivia on a lie, which was a lie. 1 year later, while Evo Morales was barred from contesting the election, his political party, the person he chose to run the election as prime minister, president, won with a landslide 1 year later. And then the persons in the opposition who perpetrated that lie had to run. Today, I was looking at TV. We had the same thing in America where Donald Trump keeps saying that the election was stolen. He tried to overturn the election in Georgia. And you know what happened? Today, the lawyers who were taking the matters to court are now indicted for perpetrating a lie in the United States together with Donald Trump. One of the laws I want to see in this electoral modernization is laws to prevent that those malicious lies perpetrated on the people of Dominica. Because we have to pass laws to ensure that those malicious lies are not perpetrated on the people of Dominica. Because when you lose an election, you have to accept that you lose an election. I want to give you some figures. Election is lost, and election is won by political parties. When a political party is getting 185 votes, and I want the observers to know that, when a political party is getting 185 votes in a constituency, 369 votes in a constituency, 336 votes in a constituency, 222 votes in a constituency, 202 votes in a constituency, 211 votes in a constituency, 501 votes in a constituency, and you can go on. And on the other side, the winning party getting over 1,000, 1,005, 1,003. How can you steal that election? How can that election be stolen? Bro, in 2000, some figures, in 2000, there were, in 2022, there were elections in 15 constituencies. To show you figures don't lie, 15 constituencies, and there were not elections in 6 constituencies. In 15 constituencies, the Dominica Labour Party up polling at 87.3% of its 2019 votes, got 93% of the total votes UWP get in all 21 constituencies. So in 15 constituencies, polling at 87.3%, obtained 93.7% of the total votes UWP got in 2019. So how that election is stolen without any diaspora voting? True. Without any diaspora voting in 2022. So, Parliament, colleagues, Parliament, Executive, I would propose that one, the notion of preventing our diaspora brothers and sisters from voting, I think, like Canada, as a matter of fact, we should take the St. Kitts law, lock, stock, and barrel, and implement it in Dominica. Every Dominican citizens who are duly registered to vote, once you meet the registration requirement, 1 year living in Dominica, 3 months in the constituency you're planning to vote, once you are registered for life until death. There should be nothing to prevent our citizens from voting. And we should not accept, we should not fall for the lies of the United Workers' Party. We should not. They cannot win elections, and they will not win. Very simple. In 2019, and we did it again, we did it in 2014. The the polling station closed at 5 o'clock. By 5:30, 5:45, using probability theory and historical data, we could predict that the Labour Party had won the election based on the data and doing so. Right? We could predict. Because we know there are 14 constituencies in Dominica. 14 constituencies in Dominica. That averaging the probability of Dominica Labour Party winning that election is 0.7, or you can say 70%. Some higher, some, but the average is 0.7. So if you have an average in 14 constituencies of 0.7, for the observers to understand, 0.7, that is the probability of the Labour Party winning the election. So we have had a free and fair election in Dominica. You have an opposition party that has never obtained the highest percentage of the votes that they have obtained is 43%. That was in 2014. Because they think they won with 33% of the vote, and they got 11 seats with 33% of the vote. In 2000, the 67% combined and formed the government. They believe they had a right to win, and they must win. So they want to do everything for them to win. But the people of Dominica have rejected them and will continue to reject them. Right? So yes, I am for some form of identification. They want to get ID card, whether it's voter ID card, whether it's national ID card, I have no difficulty with this. Whatever. Things for campaign financing, that is for some other time. Those things about amending the Constitution, that's a no-no. Term limits for the Prime Minister, that's a no-no. No amending of Constitution. But the only law, I will repeat it, that should be enacted in our election laws is that to punish those politicians who perpetrate those malicious lies saying election was stolen on the Dominican people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christian. Let me recognize Mr. Reginald Austri at the back. Are you coming to the front, or would you like to stand where you are?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me recognize the presence of the Prime Minister, members of his cabinet, our observer friends, and the general public here with us this evening. As you notice, I probably should not be speaking at this meeting, or not speaking at all. But having been part of the process as a former member of parliament, well, at the beginning of the process, I believe that I should add my voice to this very important discussion. I first of all want to compliment the Prime Minister and the government for having put this series of consultations in place. Not necessarily, or I'd rather say to add to the issues of electoral reform, which is now being debated, but also for the education aspect of those consultations. I believe that we, the Dominican people, including myself, are much more educated on the issues of election today than we were even before this consultation started. And so I believe coming out of these consultations, if anything will come out of it, is the fact that the Dominican people today are much more conscious and aware of the rights, and by being here, they're prepared to defend it at all costs. And you can see, we have a very young audience, and that is very interesting, because the young people have made it their business. They have shown a certain level of maturity. They have shown a certain level of understanding the issues that they have decided to come out there and to show their support and their solidarity for the issue being debated right now. Now, these young people were not paid to be here. They were not handpicked, but they were invited to be here like everybody else. And if you were interested, really interested in the issue of electoral reform, you would have gotten your own people, young, medium-aged, or elderly, to be at this forum so they can voice their views and voice their opinions on this very important subject matter. I'd also like to use this opportunity very briefly to again compliment Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit for giving us the opportunity to be in this beautiful facility. And for those of us who were here after hurricane and before hurricane, we knew what happened in that facility. And we knew what happened after hurricane to that facility. And the promise was made that I will replace what we've lost through the other institution. And lo and behold, our Prime Minister has found us another medical school to be the pride of Portsmouth and to assist us in our economic advancement. And these are some of the things we should be celebrating. Because clearly, personally, I do not believe that the opposition have any interest in electoral reform whatsoever. Because several opportunities have presented themselves. And at every stage, like somebody said, we have seen a shifting of the goalposts. Tonight, today, tomorrow, these consultations are continuing. Yet still, the opposition find it fitting that during the season of consultation to call for a national march against electoral reform. I mean, the process is not complete. We still have more consultations to go. Let us wait. Let us see the report at the end of the consultations, and you will decide on which action you want to take then. But what is the basis for calling for every ounce of blood to be shed to protect our democracy when there is no issue or no threat to our democracy? But we're very familiar with this on the United Workers' Party. Because this issue of electoral reform, which I accept that we need to do some modernizations, we need to do some changes like everything else. This law is over 100 years old, 75 years old, and yes, we have to do some changes. But the changes must be for the betterment of the people, for the betterment of the process, than to make the process worse and more difficult. Because to ask an overseas Dominican who was already registered, You remove him from the register, and you said, if you want to re-register, you must come to Dominica and spend 50 days. 50 days. That is what, 2.5 months. You're asking somebody who's out there in these challenging times, trying to eke a living, to send the remittances back home, to assist their families in a very tight global financial and economic situation. And you're saying to them that if you want to vote, if you want to exercise your franchise, you must leave your job, but you have to resign it, because you're not going to get 50 days leave or 90 days leave. So you're asking them to put yourself on the breadline, put yourself on the unemployed line, to come down here to enjoy something that you have been used to enjoying for the last 50 or 60 years. But what is painful is the attack that is being leveled against people in the diaspora. We make, in fact, and publicly, I'm not talking about what happens I'm talking about public pronouncements, that these people stay where they are. That's where you work. That's where you pay your taxes. But some of these people pay taxes here. They disregard the remittances as, oh, it's just a little few dollars they send in now and then. But let me tell you something, whether it's a few now and then, that is fine. That is your contribution to your country, because whatever small it is, it goes back into circulation in the economy, in the local economy, in the rural economies, and the poor people can then have a life. Brothers and sisters, let us not forget that this issue of electoral reform is one that is laced with politics, and that has, I believe, attempting to undermine the process of electoral reform. We have politicized it to the extent that we have said that electoral reform must ensure that the opposition wins an election. And they will not accept any recommendations made by Dennis Byron if their recommendations are not accepted wholesale. Every single one of the recommendations they want enacted, and then they'll be satisfied with the process. Now, that notion that the diaspora is responsible for making us win, that is a false notion. That is a notion that is geared at attacking diaspora. Because it was the United Workers' Party who first went to the diaspora to bring them along to vote for them. Edison James in 1995 stated that he was able to win the election because he did what no other political party had done. And when they asked what it was, he said, I brought in my people to vote. So that was started by the United Workers' Party. What has happened is they did not realize that the diaspora were fed up with them. And so they expected the diaspora to come to vote for them. But conversely, the diaspora expressed their love for the Dominican Labour Party, Roosevelt Skerrit, and the Commonwealth of Dominica. And so they have a bone to pick with the diaspora. They have a bone to pick with the diaspora for having them their claim. But while they do that, and all politics, like what I said, is on the ground. My brother, you can't win the politics in the air. In local Caribbean politics, you have to touch flesh. You have to visit families. You have to walk the streets. Even me, a 7 or 8 time election, whatever you want to call it, I never took chances with elections. In fact, I used to be criticized for being overly cautious about winning my seat, which I won by what? 20% of the votes. Never in doubt, but I never took the people for granted. And politicians have a tendency to take the people for granted and believe that the people are our machines that we tie there, and once we snap our fingers, they will respond to us. How can you be an effective government opposition when your leadership lives out of state? Who is manning the ship? Who is doing the work on the ground? And both opposition parties, and that is why today they're not even in the parliament. That's the painful thing about it. And they debar themselves from being part of the process. They're not in the parliament. So I believe that yes, we support the process, and don't forget the number of demonstrations, the number of protest actions, the number of calls for violence like we saw on February 7th over the issue of electoral reform. And here we are today, attempting to bring this process closer to the people, to make some amendments to the process. Even these consultations, they have criticized it. They've criticized it. They say, oh, we're paying people to come to these consultations. And that is, but while they're not supporting this consultation, they come to those consultations to make the point, to impress who they need to impress, and then they disappear. No, this is not a show. This is serious business. This is about the lives of the Dominican people. And that is why they keep shifting the goalpost. There was one time when the leader of the opposition had agreed to go to the parliament. After walking out of the parliament, he confessed publicly that the government had made a few amendments and he could live with them. So he was prepared to go to parliament until one of them placed an injunction against going to the parliament to pass the necessary legislation. We see in this final the issue of campaign financing. This was never part of the original agenda of the opposition. It only became an agenda in recent times that the government must now find money. The government must now find money to give men that are loiterers in the country. Loiterers in the country. Men who have done no work. Men who have not even serviced their constituencies. Men who have not been to their constituency offices. And they're now saying that they must give me a check of $10 million so I could contest election in this country. Where have this been? Where have you heard this? And they had money. When they had money, spending, finance was not an issue. If you have now lost your source of financing, then that's another problem. Remember, in the last election, the Al Jazeera News told us, with voice clips, with action, that 2 diplomatic positions were being offered at $400,000 US each to buy uniforms, to buy microphones, to buy PA systems, to buy t-shirts. That was the purpose. And then they claim, oh, we'll bring it in under humanitarian funding. That was the motivation of the United Workers' Party government. And that tells me that the issue of electoral reform, though very necessary, is not the issue for this wrangling and this warring and this fighting. We can meet, we can discuss, we can evaluate. All the questions have been recorded by the government side. We'll look at them and we'll find a mechanism to make a decision that will be in the best interest of the people of Dominica. Finally, out of 8 children from my parents, 6 of them live overseas and 1 have a green card. That makes 7. I'm the only one left here being 8. They come down regularly. My mom is 86 years. They come down every 3 months. A different one come down, check mommy, and run back up, bring goods, bring money, bring all the doctor's fees for the next year. This is the contribution of my people in the diaspora. And I will not allow anybody to disenfranchise them from coming here to select a government that they believe over the last 20 years have been the best thing Dominica has seen in a very long time. Who believe that in all our trials and our tribulation is the Dominican Labour Party and Roosevelt Skerry that was there with us. After Hurricane Erika, when 2 communities were destroyed, it was Roosevelt Skerry and Roosevelt Skerry alone. Maria, when 95% of the GDP was destroyed, I was Minister of Housing. Out of the 30,000 homes we had, 25,000 were destroyed and damaged. Today, 4 or 5 years after the hurricane, you will never recognize that this was the country that nobody thought would have recovered through the efforts of this government. Our country is still very tender. Our country is still recovering from the bumps and the bruises and the scratches of Maria. And no sooner had we had COVID, and that's another story by itself. And the people in the diaspora, they understand what this government has done to this country to bring us where we are today. And if they decide to vote back this government at any election, they would be within their right to do so. Because when things was bad, it's Kerry that was there with us. When things was bad, it was the Dominican Labour Party that was there with us. And so, on that basis, the United Workers' Party have decided that they cannot beat the Labour Party through the ballots. And so they have confessed publicly that they will move us by force. And that is what this rally in Roseau tomorrow is about, to attempt to put pressure on the government to move this government by force. And that is the motivation of the United Workers' Party, and we have to guard against it. No Dominican should be disenfranchised from his right to vote. The other issues can be managed, whether it's like ID cards, and the issue of campaign financing, we will not put that additional burden. The same way we did not put the burden of the airport on the taxpayers of this country, similarly, we will not put the burden of lazy people wanting to run elections on the backs of the taxpayers of this country. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oshie, for your very passionate contribution. The gentleman on this side in the white shirt, next to Mr. Savre. And then we will have Mr. Etienne and the gentleman to the back.
Hi, good evening to everyone. It's, let me pay a recognition to our Prime Minister and the members of government who've come down to consult with us on this really important topic and long-running issue. But especially I want to recognize my fellow citizens, my fellow community members who've come out in their numbers, and I'm really proud of that you've come out here to listen and to discuss and to sorry, my name, Rob Douglas. Some people will recognize my family name. Now, I'm going to divert a little bit from some of the comments that I've made tonight. You know, people talk about, or in the recommendations by Sir Byron, he talks about the cleansing of the list, and the list, as you say, is self-cleansing, and it's kind of a red herring. Yes, cleanse the list. It's not a bad thing to have a clean list, a list that hasn't got dead people on it. But actually, what is the effect of dead people being on the list? It only means really that somebody is trying to vote as a dead person, perhaps. And we first of all, we have no evidence of that. Secondly, you know, that's a job for two IT interns for a couple of days to go through the list and take dead people off of it. So yes, let's do that. But really, if we're worried about people who are posing as dead people to voting, then, you know, let's have some kind of task force which is run by the Electoral Commission to operate during election times to reduce crime, electoral crime of any kind. Somebody who wants to vote twice, somebody who wants to vote as a dead person, whatever it is, we have some kind of a task force in place that deals with that. And I think Sir Byron talks about the Electoral Commission and making them a bit more financially independent, and that's not a bad thing. But in the end, really, it's just a red herring. It's not really going to get us to where we want. At the end of this process, we need to deepen the franchise, i.e. people have to have more confidence that the government that have voted have really been voted, and we need to widen it. As many people as possible need to be able to vote. And this is why the diaspora have to be able to vote in our elections. It's crazy that we've got that resource out there, an educated, productive resource out there that we need to help us develop this country, that we're going to then say to them that they can't vote. That's a no-no. That really has to come out of it completely. 50, 90 days, that's a nonsense. That has to be the end of that. So yes, we should modernize our electoral process. It's 2023 now. It's not 1973. So we can't really do things the same way we've been doing them before. Another card, I think, is a kind of that's old technology. And that's why I don't have a problem with fingerprinting. I mean, if that's going to make sure that only a person can only vote once in Dominica, I haven't got a problem with that. You know, people talk about criminal connotations, and that is maybe true, but that's connotations. If it means that we need to have a system in Dominica where we know that one person has voted once and it uses, you know, fingerprinting to do that, that's fine. But another card, no. Shem was absolutely right. It's another piece of plastic in your pocket, you know, and you know, and maybe you can use your other IDs to do that work. But I think, you know, moving forward, the technology, we should use better technology in our elections. Other countries are doing it. Dominica should do it. Why not? That's a good idea. The idea, though, of financing campaign financing is a big elephant in the room. Campaign financing does matter. People say, okay, that's not what wins elections. But then why spend a few $1 million on an election cycle? The fact of the matter is it does matter, and elections really should be about a contention of ideas, not a contention of finances. So we should find a way to I don't want to say level the playing field, because your idea, your ability to raise money to run a campaign is part of what makes you a politician. And so you should have that independence. However, the election should not be so heavily weighted on the fact that one set of people can spend, you know, multiple millions and others cannot. I have a problem with that, and we should find a way to deal with that. I don't think that's a bad thing going forward. Most developed countries have some form of limiting finance in their politics. The US does it, the UK does it, etc., etc. There's a reason why they do it. It's because they want ideas to contend more than they want money to contend. So it's something we need to look at. Whether the state should finance it, maybe not a good idea, because we don't really have that money. But we should really examine campaign finance in a deeper form, and maybe we don't have the time to do it before we have to enable the legislation, but we should be looking at it. I think that's something that will increase the confidence in the whole franchise process, and I would back a deeper study into how we can organize finances in Dominica. You know, some of the things that we spend money on during elections, you know, to my mind, and it's a personal thing, a little bit unnecessary. You know, we litter our time with these red flags. One is right outside there in front of our brand new university. Still, many months after the election, why should that be? International artists come down to perform. You know, is that really necessary? I don't know. We need to look at it. As citizens, we're advancing our democracy, we're advancing our electoral process, and we should look to modernize that part of it as well. So really, that's what I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Douglas. Let's have Mr. Etienne, Vincent Etienne.
Good evening, everyone. After having listened to the very learned AG and all those wonderful contributions that have been made, I too have some areas I'd like to touch on, though most of them have been touched already. I first want to start with an opportunity I've had living in the United States for a number of years. And I have been fortunate enough to participate in the electoral process. And a number of my friends in the US keep calling me and hitting me on the thing about fixed date. You know, you've lived in the US and you know we're talking about fixed date for elections. And a number of times I've had to remind them that our case in Dominica is almost similar. The president of the US has a fixed date for election, and so does our president in Dominica. You know, so although our president in Dominica may be ceremonial, but the fact is, when we're talking about fixed dates, if we want to compare the US with Dominica, our both presidents have fixed dates for election. And I always keep stressing that on them and reminding them, you know, don't use the election of our prime minister and our legislature as a basis for anything. But remember, our both presidents, both those in the US, that is the top, when we talk about the bastion of democracy in the US, they have a fixed date for a president, and in Dominica, we have a fixed date for a president. I know very soon the prime minister, maybe next week after next prime minister, will tell us about who our new president is going to be. I also remember in the United States, and it has always stuck with me, being in the US, I remember the day, well, I can say that because I have no intention to go up for electoral politics. But I remember living in the US, I became a citizen. I will say that, I became a citizen. And the first thing that has stuck with me was as soon as I left where you did the swearing in On the outside, there were a number of political parties, and all they wanted you to do, even before the ink dry on the paper, is that they want you to register. As a citizen, the first right, your ultimate right, even in the US, and anybody here who lives in the US or became a citizen will attest to that too. The people right outside, as you're coming out of the door, they pull in your hand. Now you're a citizen, your first right is to vote. In Dominica, there is nothing that we should do or encourage that's going to deprive us of not being able to vote. As long as you're a Dominican, that's a privilege you have. We've seen that in most of the other countries, and that is something we have to really cherish in Dominica. And we should be prepared to fight, if it is that to give our blood or whatever, to make sure we reserve that thing. All right? I heard Mr. James was saying the other day that the only way they're going to win the election is that they have a number of proposals that they're making. And if they can get all their recommendations in, that is the way they're going to win the election. And a number of persons here have alluded to the fact that you don't win election on the way that they're approaching. It's something totally different. You know, you have to be on the ground, you have to be in touch with people, and not necessarily that we need to give our secrets while we're consecutively winning elections. That is something that they need to know on their own, all right? And, you know, so what Mr. James is thinking is totally far-fetched. I also remember in the US, I got what is called a voter's ID card. It was a paper, something almost like your Social Security. But the truth of the matter, I lost that thing in a matter of 2 days. So I never voted in the US using that voters registration thing. I would have just stepped in there, say my name, whatever, show them an ID, but that voters registration card, that thing was long lost. It was absolutely of no significance. Once you have, and I strongly believe we need to get that in Dominica too, as long as we have some form of ID, be it our passport, be it anything with our picture, I think should suffice. So the idea of going and spending all that kind of money for a preparation of a voter's ID card, I think that is totally, as Mr. Nathan would say, total nonsense. You know, any formal ID with a picture, like somebody, I think it was Papi Joe said, if maybe on some of our IDs we could have a number that says whatever it is, then maybe that's good. But to put have a card that is going to be used once, probably every 5 years, is a total waste of resource. It's not something I would talk about either. The cleansing of the voters list is something I think we all agree on because it looked like it is bloated. There are a number of persons who are dead, that's on it. But at no point in time, we as Dominicans should do anything or encourage anybody to remove persons from that voters list. I can tell you of relatives that I have that, well, one in particular who knows Dominica more than me or knows what's happening in Dominica more than me is suffering from this dialysis stuff and cannot come to Dominica very often. But a few weeks ago, there was an incident happening outside Purple Turtle where I live. And, you know, he was calling me and saying, but look, there's a shooting out there. You know, I said, but outside, but what are you talking about? You know, and he's telling me, step outside, you know, there is some activity. I'm saying that to allude to the fact that there are some persons who are overseas and be it because of medical conditions or whatever, cannot be in Dominica as much as they would like to. But they are so in tuned because every other week, a box coming in, you know, a money coming in, something happening, you know, and, you know, it's just totally ridiculous. It's total nonsense to think that those persons, because they're not here, we're not thinking of their situation or anything, you know, be it medical, be it what other obligations they have in there. The fact that they cannot be here as often, that they should be removed, that is crazy. That is crazy. And that is one of the things I think we have to be very, very firm about. And whatever it is going to take to make sure that never happens in our country, that we do it as well. There is the thing about campaign financing. And, you know, it's something that I really laugh at. Because I see election something like you're applying for a job.
You have Dominica as the employer. You have the voters that are the interviewers. You have the political parties that are the applicants. It's no way in life, if we're to, because things need to make sense to me so that I can absorb it and I can really take it in. So you're applying for a job. You're telling me, the employer, that would be Dominica or Dominica Treasury, I must give you money to do your resume. I must give you money to buy your clothes. I must give you money to pay transportation. I must give you money, but that doesn't make sense. That's total nonsense. So the idea of maybe using our scarce resources where we can use our money to do everything else, to give it to the politicians, that Sabaka sense, that is nonsense. That has to be garbage. That has to be thrown out. Let's just not give that much consideration. And this is another of the things that we need to fight tooth and nail, to say that Dominicans, our little money we get in one way or the other, has so many things to do, houses to build, children, send money for, our children in university, all kind of stuff that we have, to take that money and give the politician to go and campaign. That would be a joke. That is really a joke. I cannot be employing you and you come into an interview and you telling me give you money for, so there's something sudden. So something for more we as Dominicans, we have to be very, very particular with those things. When a lot of the opposition people or whoever comes with these ideas or try to fool us and tell us in America, it's not like that, or in England, not like that, ask them to reference Commonwealth countries to us. Which are those they know that have those fixed dates, If they tell you about America, tell them, okay, your president have a fixed date. Our president have a fixed date too. Just that our president is ceremonial, So those are some of the kind of issues that we really need to think. And, I reckon the presence of the observers here, I really like to think that the understanding, we as the Dominican people, what it is that we really want. The majority of us here, we're peaceful, loving people. We understand, there needs to be some reform. Some of the things are maybe antiquated. But we as a people, we've never had what we call bribery in our elections or, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. And as much as I applaud, the efforts of the Prime Minister, or the cabinet, the government, in terms of trying to reform and do all that type of stuff. A lot of those things not necessary. We've been doing good all those years, And, finally, I just want to say, me personally, I just want what is best for Dominica. You see all the rah-rah, like they're planning for tomorrow and that kind of thing, the opposition people think, that doesn't help anything. What it is, you said you wanted reform. We're trying our best. We're doing everything possible. Look, we're in all kind of consultations. We've paid money, Then you want to go and fight. Things doesn't make sense, For me personally, and I know most Dominicans, most of us here and all of, we just want peace. We just want to develop this country. We want to live in harmony, I, for one, it's like a lot of other people I know, they leave and they went to America or whatever. I did the reverse, because I'm American. I'm in Dominica, and it's here I want to live. Here I want to, be able to be comfortable and see everybody happy. All right? So let us really, on some of those points, I just want to, the thing of our campaign financing, that is nonsense. We cannot really be doing the interview and then, we have to give you money to build your thing. That is one. We talk about the campaign financing. We talk about the the cleaning of the voters list, and then the ID. Those are things I don't think we need to give much consideration to. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Etienne. And I do not want us to worry about repetition because we are really here to express our views. So we really don't mind that some of you share the same views. We have another Etienne at the back who would like to speak to us, and then we'll come to the young lady at the back. We've not heard a lady in a while. It's your number 2.
Yeah, good night, everyone. I want to say good night to the Honorable Prime Minister and the other members of Cabinet and the observers. I just wanted to observe one thing, where we are. We are not at Ross University. We are America, Canada, School of Medicine. The place they said I was pie in the sky. Election gimmick, that would never happen. We are here right now. These are the things I wanted to observe when you come to Dominica. The great work that the Prime Minister and the Dominican Labour Party has been doing, the government has been doing, that I wanted to observe. All right, because that electoral reform, that to me, that is just total. Put that in the garbage. Put that in the garbage, because we're not going back there. We're there already. For years now, we're doing that. Now we're there. All right? This man, Honorable Robert Skerritt, and the Dominican Labour Party have been doing a lot for Dominica. Dominica came independent in 1978. I was born in 1976. All right? From 7 prime ministers before this one man there. All right? And look at the condition Dominica was before Maria and where Dominica is today. 7 prime ministers before could not bring Dominica where it is today. One man did it. One man did it. After Hurricane Maria, everybody said Dominica finished. So if Dominica finished, which means we go back to 0. From 0 to here right now. All right, we don't need no cat to come and tell me I can vote and I can't vote. I've been doing that long time. All right, and that thing about dead people voting, come on. So if I go pay bush, I take off my election day, I strip off my vehicle, take off all the red flag, take off my red shirt, put my white shirt on me, and I go by the school and I meet Nadine Paul, and I meet Kira, help me. I meet Eldalin, I meet Calista, and they pull up there, and I walk in, and I say, come and vote, as Gags, Edgar, that died how long ago? They're going to tell me, okay, vote, I'm Edgar, like seriously? Will you find that making sense? And people who believe in that, anybody that believes that people vote in Dominica, they need some lick of Mao Pima. They need some lick of Mao Pima to come and tell me that people voted in Dominica. Come on, man. And nothing of giving parties money to go on campaign. My brother, work for your own money. Go and look for your money if you want to campaign. You say you man, show you man. Check. Money do win elections. Presently today, money win elections. Because I ain't going to vote nobody that cannot give me a hospital. I'm not going to vote nobody that can't fix my road. Money win election. During the Rosie time, well, Rosie used to come and talk to young people, because I always say during my campaign, the first person that make me the ice cream was Rosie Douglas, you know. The first people that bring me cabrits was Rosie. See what cabrits be. First man that bring me cabrits was Rosie Douglas. He would come at your home. If a man come at your home and he sit down, you offer him food, you give him food. You give him food, he eat. After he finish, he have a grain of peas and he tell you want that catapult to go and kill a bird. Because he can't believe you cook a pizza so hard. After he finish it and he still laughing at you, what can you have a man like that? You don't have to love that man. That's what the man did. He used to take everybody on the quet and bring them all over. And then go along. And ice cream, I don't even sure he was paying for it because they pay themselves. I don't even know. So he didn't need money. All right? The only election I knew and I can see from my time that was told in Dominica was 1990. When Eugenia Charles changed Paybush constituency and put Portsmouth with Dodan and put Kalibishi with Paybush. To give her the upper hand so Rosie could lose the election. That is the only election I see in Dominica that was not fair. All right? apart from that, every election in Dominica was fair. All right? Look, United Workers Party not vexed about bringing young people to vote, you know. They mad about the Dominican Labour Party beat them to it because we bring more people to vote. And that is it. So you're not vexed. Not the one they don't want it, you're just vexed. They cannot keep up. You cannot want to tell me after the election, 5 years you pull up on a radio trying to catch the Prime Minister dirty. 5 years, instead of going to build up, go back, build, find some money, talk to people, let people know, partner with you. You stand up and sit down wasting time on a radio station. Whole night, one man is the topic. Who best scare it corrupt? Huh? And you want to tell me election time the state have to give you money to go and run campaign? My brother, you mad man. Back we go in, man. Make the mass. It doesn't mass. It really doesn't mass. All right? So I'm saying all that to tell you that we are in good hands and we never stole the election. We took our time, we analyzed, we see who is the best leader, and we went out to vote. This is what I want you to observe when you come here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Etienne. There's a young lady at the back. I'll recognize the mayor next, and then Mr. Simeon Albert.
Good evening, everyone. Protocol has been established. Carol Baron. It's indeed a pleasure to be here this evening. I actually came from work all the way to Scottshead and drove to reach here because I really wanted to be part. I didn't want to be part of Scottshead. I wanted to be part of Portsmouth because that's the area that I live. And sometimes I try to comprehend how on earth can someone, I mean, we're going to always repeat ourselves, but how on earth can someone say to me, in the constituency that I live, in the cottage constituency, that let's say, for example, Louis Barron, who is dead, can walk in when you have people that actually know everybody in that area can vote. Not even like my 7-year-old comprehend that. So I don't even know why we would, as adults who are so educated, would even continue repeating such nonsense. It's nonsense to me. When it comes to campaign financing and monies, I have tried, like I have a group, which is an elderly group, and I have learned in organizing my group. If, for example, some organization out of Dominica want to give me $10,000, and I don't want anybody to ask me, well, you have $10,000 and you can only use $5,000, and we will do this with the other $5,000. I had to register my group as a non-profitable organization in order for this to happen. You have to go through all the protocols. And I'm trying to understand as a private entity, I had to do all that just so that someone don't have to scrutinize, you know, like let's say monies or Pampers or whatever I would have received. And you're saying to me like a government who runs a country, somebody should tell them that if the airport costs $30 million, they should not accept $30 million, but accept $20 million because the government have no right to have such amount of money. It's ridiculous. I am really, really glad to see a lot of young people. I am really glad. I mean, it means that we understand, or we are understanding that telling me that I am not able, or let's say for example, my daughters who lives overseas are not able to come to Dominica to vote when that day is called, for me is ridiculous. And like Mr. Shem, I will fight for my rights. Honestly, I will fight for that. I have a big mouth, I can fight for that. Honestly. There was one thing that was on my mind, and I think it has gone, but I would really like to say thumbs up to the government of Dominica, thumbs up to the Prime Minister for allowing us to be able to speak because I felt at one time that election forum stuff was only, I felt it would have only be for people of high repute, and I would have never got the opportunity to sit in such forum. So I feel privileged to be here, and I thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barron. Let's hear from Ms. Brady.
Good evening to everybody, Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, Cabinet parliamentarians, AG, CAPSEC, and to everyone gathered here tonight. I'll be quite short, but I just wanted to lend my hand in support of the modernization of this electoral process here in Dominica. But there are some disagreements and some recommendations I would like to share. I believe all Dominicans are entitled to vote. It's our democratic right, regardless of where we live, regardless of where we are. We are born Dominicans. We are Dominicans, and nobody should infringe on that democracy. Nobody should infringe that we should not be able to vote. Nobody shouldn't tell my mother, who is in St. Croix, that she cannot come down and vote. That is her right. She's a Dominican. She contributes to our economy. We look to our diaspora and friends for support. You know, they have investments here, they have their savings here, they generate, they assist in our economic contributions here in the country. So why should they be deprived of voting? And we must stand and ensure that that is not done. We have to stand in support that every Dominican, regardless of where they are and who they are, once they are sound in mind, they are 18 years old, and they are registered, that they should be entitled to vote. In terms of the campaign financing, Honorable Prime Minister, we have a saying in Portsmouth: if you freight powder, don't play mass. And if you want to run the elections, you should know where, if you want to contest for the elections, you should know where your money is coming out. We see every day that these people use their mouth to degrade our country and to say bad things about the Prime Minister and to bring down the country. They should use that mouth to find their finances. I don't see no reason why the state should be providing any money to any political party for campaigning when we have so much to be done in our country. We've come from many disasters, COVID, economic challenges now. We have much work to do, and the money that we have in the country should be used for these developments and not to finance any political party to run elections. So they have to finance their money, and you cannot tell me that if I have $1 million that I should limit my campaign for you because you don't have it. I run my campaign the way that I choose. I know what works for my party. So then you have to figure out what works for you and find your money to do what you have to do. In terms of removing people from the list, dead persons, we know for a fact that dead people are not voting. Okay, they're talking about it, It can be easily done. A recommendation, we create a linkage between the registry and the electoral office. The councils register the deaf in various areas in the country. Then we go to the registry to register the final registration. A linkage, a monthly report. This amount of people is dead, and you send that report to the electoral office, and they just omit the names from the list so that by the time elections come, we 80–90% sure that most persons who have died already is removed from the list, and we shut them up in that regard, because we know it's nonsense, but it's something that can be easily taken care of. One of the areas I think we should be focusing is on increasing voting, registration of voters in our country. We need to see more and more people voting. And one of the challenges, I think, many of the persons who does the registrations are employed people. So normally you see that the registration takes place after 4. We have several council offices throughout Dominica. Let's get persons trained in these offices and ensure that we can have registration done in our offices 8 to 4, Monday to Friday, so we can have more registration done and we can see more people coming out to vote. And whenever the Prime Minister decides that is election, we don't have to be running. We know that our persons are registered and we're ready. We are always ready, but we're more ready again. So, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to commend you and the Dominican Labour Party on this venture. They've been asking for it. No, we're giving it to them. They're still fighting. They don't know what they want. But we're going to go ahead and do our share and do the modernization. And the people, as you can see, are in full support of what you're doing. And we will continue to support and to work with you to ensure that Dominica moves forward.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brady Prince, for those recommendations and your feedback. Mr. Simeon Albert.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And let me say a special good evening to Portsmouth and to our Prime Minister and to the observers who are present here with us tonight. You know, someone asked me when I was traveling here, what am I doing in Portsmouth? I live Kenfield and I'm all the way in Portsmouth. I say, well, you know, we don't discriminate. We encourage our citizens wherever they are to come together to participate and to contribute towards the discussion and towards the development of our country. Now, I want to put myself on record as representing the many people who, over the past 20 years, have been participating both locally and internationally towards the many discussions. I should introduce myself as a businessman and also as a talk show host. Many of you would hear my voice on the radio, and particularly I like dealing with issues of politics, and I always deal with that on a weekly basis. Now, I followed the consultation from since the conception of it, and we have been talking on the issue of electoral reform for a number of years now. I want to emphasize that a lot of people who are citizens of Dominica, who for some reason work abroad and have to be abroad, have said that they are totally against people removing their names on the list and attempting to disenfranchise them from having to vote where election is concerned. And so I would hope that in this reform, that the issue of citizens of Dominica, that there can be no question, like everyone else have said, that they should be afforded equal right as a citizen of Dominica to vote. This idea that there should be a virtual constituency and external constituency, I mean, how are you trying to tell a person who was born in Portsmouth, their mother, their father is there, their grandparents were buried there, that's where they know as their home. Many people have their properties. I was chairman of Kenfield Urban Council for 15 years. Most of the properties you see in Kenfield are not owned by people who are resident. Most of them, sometimes they travel, but they own their properties. They pay their council taxes. They lease their properties. How do you tell these people who come down to Dominica annually on so many occasions that they should not have a right to vote? So these people are expressing their views and saying that when it comes to that, they believe that, and I fully support, that this issue of 5 years, it's about time we get this off the record. This issue of setting up an aggregate of 50 to 90 days for a citizen to be on the island in order to have a right to vote is something that we should totally, you know, remove from the bill and not present that hurdle on our citizens. Every move we make in this reform should be to make it easier for our citizens to be able to vote and not more difficult. Now, on the issue of, now Mr. Linton said in the consultation in Roseau that we should be in reform, and I'm quoting his words, we should be in reform to remove persons' names from the list who are not ordinary resident in Dominica. Names should be removed. That is the reason why the UWP is in reform. Not because they have any other concern, but they believe that we should be in reform today to remove, instead of encouraging people to vote, they are on a campaign, and they have been on that campaign for a number of years now, attempting to seek to deny citizens. And many of you will recall what happened back in 2019. When one day before election, there was a serious, you know, protests going on in the country, blocking of roads, burning of fire, trying to deny citizens who are coming home to come home and vote. All of these activities was going on in the country. And interestingly, we had the observers who was on the island, and I'm happy that they are here tonight with us, because they too gave their expression of what they saw
from the citizens of this country after the election. And I would like to quote something that they said. You had the Commonwealth observers who said, on election day, our observers reported a peaceful and well-managed general election. They went on to say that voters were free to express their franchise. Voters turned out early and in ordinary fashion. They went on to say, in concluding, it is our considered view that the result reflected the views of the citizens of country, the collective will of the people who voted, and that the December 6th election was conducted in accordance with the laws of Dominica. That was the Commonwealth observers who oversaw the election after a vicious move by the UWP to try to deny citizens from voting. We also had the CARICOM observers. They said that the assessment of the election activities by the mission is that voters were able to cast their ballots without intimidation or fear. So where is the problem in our election? They went on to say further, and that the result of the 6th of December 2019 election reflected the will of the people of the Commonwealth of Dominica. So they didn't find any problem with the election when they did the observations. We also had the OAS. As you know, there was a battle during that time with the OAS and what they were thinking. And representation had to be made by Honorable Vincent Desson and Honorable Francine Baron at the time. And the OAS sat and they said to the people after the election and to us as citizens that we are here to tell you that we observe that the election process and that we are satisfied that on election day the people voted, their votes reflect the will of the people who voted. So by saying that the observers were there, now I've called 3 of them. We look at cricket every day. When the umpire say out, they call for the third man, because there is somebody sitting watching. And if the third man don't catch it right, they go to the camera and they replay. But they conclude that the man is out. And you have to accept that you don't go mashing up the wicket, mashing up the bat and playing bad on the field and want to stop the game. So you have an opposition who failed to accept that they lost the election. And by virtue of that, they continue to propagate a lie. And my friend Clarence Christian spoke about it. Today I was looking at the news. So many indictments against Donald Trump for having propagated a lie, led the people to believe in a lie that took lives of citizens. That lie have destroyed private and public properties in Dominica. I spent 10 hours in a studio simply because of that lie. Couldn't go to my home because of fear that I would be injured on my way to Kenfield. And I had to spend from 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning when it was safe so that I could go at my home. This is what the fear that these guys have led people to believe in this country that have caused so much damage. And so therefore, there is no need to deny citizens. We should disband these 5 years altogether, and we should remove all of this. We should not make it more difficult for them. And therefore, we should remove these 50 to 90 days aggregate and allow citizens to be free, because that's what we are promoting. We sign many treaties within the region to allow for our citizens to move freely within the islands so that they can go and work, they can find better life. They come to Dominica too, they do the very same. And so we should not deny them. Our CARICOM nationals have the right to vote. Why should we deny our citizens the right to vote who are born here in Dominica? So we must stand up and fight for them, those of us who are here. On the issue of dead people, every time I hear that thing about dead people, I shake my head. Because people die every day. I have gone to the statistics and asked them to look at the results of how many people die in every year. Before COVID, we had almost 500 and plus people dying every year. COVID made us realize it, because all we were doing after COVID was who die. We're looking for the news next day. So we're recognizing it more, and it is published more on social media. But people die every day. And so the issue of cleansing the list where people die is a continuous process. And even we do this reform now, it's not going to change the fact that immediately after the reform is done, that there will be people's name who we will have to take out on the list. So I don't think that's an issue. It's an issue of managing it, and political parties and all those interested parties have been engaging in the very same process. Now, on the issue of voter ID card, Mr. Byron, when I went through his report, said that, and I want to quote him on page 24 of his report. He said, although I am still of the view that fingerprinting is a viable biometric in this context, I also appreciate the facial recognition is an effective biometric tool to be used to verify a person's identity. He went on to say that the draft legislation contains provisions for facial images to be taken as part of the registration process. The question he asked is whether a facial image as the primary biometric would be sufficient to provide certainty or identify in all cases, or whether the biometric should be only one element of the biometric data needed for this purpose. And then he went on to say that the system would have the capability to capture and manage facial images. What does that tell us? That if you go into reconfirm, re-register, and they take your photograph, your date of birth, why is there a need for another card? When we are now asking about a national ID card and a multi-purpose card. I traveled to St. Lucia on my passport, on my driver's license, on my social security card. They do not question me when I get to St. Lucia, why are you traveling on this document? They identify me. They look at me and they look at the picture and they say, well, that is you. And I go freely. So why in Dominica we want to make it so difficult for people to be able to identify themselves simply by having a biometric photograph being taken? This issue of fingerprint is something that people are very suspicious of. And if we were to implement that, we would deny a number of Dominicans from participating in the election simply because they don't want their fingerprint taken. So we must make it easy and to encourage people to be registered and to be able to vote. So I'm totally against this issue of fingerprinting. I am prepared to support Sebayon on this one, that in his view, that the facial biometric, your photograph is sufficient to ID you. And on the mere fact that they will be taking it when we are going to reconfirm and for new persons who are going to be registered, I believe that this is sufficient enough for us to be able to cast our vote. Because if you miss your driver's license in your wallet, you should have your social security card. And if you happen to forget your passport, then you have got no reason why you shouldn't have an ID, because you have free options. And I think the legislation should be designed in such a way to include all three of the above. And they actually conducted a survey as to persons who would lose their ID. And I have to say it's interesting, the results. Persons whose ID card is lost, they went on to say, or destroyed based on his satisfaction that the person has a valid passport or the government issued ID. So they were asking the people what would be their preferred form of ID in such an event. And what's interesting in the results is that the people who strongly agreed for a government ID was 368 people in terms of the number of persons that they polled at the time. And the free high score was the government ID, 368, the issued passport, which 324, and social security card, which is 329. So it obviously tells me that our citizens have no difficulty with that form of ID. And why should we put this state under any further expense just to ID us when we have that means that can be identified. So I do hope that the Electoral Commission and the government will take into consideration the fact that this is sufficient. I don't want to go and do no ID. My free ID working for me internationally. I expect it to work for me locally. And I would suggest that we recommend what Sir Byron has said in the report in relation to this. Now, with regard to campaign finance, I mean, you know, if you realize that Labour Party is a very powerful political organization and has strong support, not just locally, but internationally. And that strong support is because people are highly satisfied with the leadership of the country, with the work that is being done to take Dominica to the next level. And hence the reason why so many of our people are so passionate about coming in to vote whenever election is called. They just want to know when the date is to find themselves down here. And some of them have expressed themselves on the radio to me and said they will come in whether it's a people they have to take, but they want to be there on election day because that is their constitutional right. And I don't think that by any chance we should ever allow anybody to take this away from them. So fingerprinting, no way. Facial ID, we fully support that. Now, on this issue of election campaign, as I was saying, why should the government have to poll its politicians during a campaign? I read this thing. I was surprised to see the requirement that is in the bill that is being presented. This thing is worse than the Integrity Commission. The demand it makes, I wouldn't want to be a politician to go under that. To me, that is to discourage people to even come and represent their country. Just like how sometimes you find it very difficult to get chairmen to represent on certain boards and certain institutions because why? They have to declare their asset, that of their children, that of their family, their mother, for simple little money. People don't want to do it. So it makes it more difficult to get people to contribute towards the country's development because of all of these requirements. And when I look at the issue of policing this thing, who's going to police that? How are they going to police it? This is just going to be another punching bag, if created, for the opposition. Because they will say who the Labour Party put there, who this one put there, and obviously it will be another political football. So our small island Dominica is not ready for that kind of legislation that I see there. I can understand the United States, they have over 300 million people. But we're under 100,000. So I think that we need to shelve that. Maybe the future generation can consider it, but our generation, that's not for us at this point in time. All political parties have means of raising their money. We know that. It has been reported to us. Sam Raphael told us how well the UWP was raising their money. We also had the Al Jazeera report who told us how well they're raising their money. So why is there an issue of asking the state or asking the citizens to bear any other burden for them when they have their means of raising their money? So my view is that this issue of campaign finance, we should remove this thing and not present that at this time, because to police that will mean that the state now have to budget for that. So you have to budget for ID cards. You have to budget for a commission to man this issue, and the demand is humongous on the people. Plus, they will publish the names of persons who make country. We want them to be published. You know, people like their privacy. And the commission would have the right to publish your name if you give a certain contribution of a certain amount to the political party. So I think when I look at this day on this basis, I want to say straight up the bat that this is one of the bills that should never be considered at this point in time, and that we should move forward with the recommendation, because there was not much in terms of what was being demanded by the opposition. It's only about denying our citizens of Dominica their God-given right, which is to be able to cast their votes at the general election. On the issue of the CCJ, I heard Mr. James today, who was at the consultation yesterday, expressing, oh, the CCJ said this, the CCJ said that. And it's a matter of trying to bring to perfection their lie that they have propagated for so many years, that they made their pleading before the CCJ, you know. And one judge chose to say, if true, you know, if what they say is true, then it is of grave concern The judge did not know if what they said was true. But because they keep pleading it and making the same noise over and over, he finally said, if that is true, then that is of grave concern. Well, the fact is, it is not true that there was any voter fraud or treating or bribery or any of the things that they continuously claim. And the result of the Commonwealth observers, the CARICOM observers, the OAS, who all reported after the elections that they have observed in Dominica, help us to better understand as citizens that the election process in Dominica is well managed and is always above law. And there is no need for us as citizens to be wary. So I want to place on record today that we are here not because there is a problem with our election system, but because our Prime Minister have decided that to allow for further consultation, because Labour Party could have gone to the Parliament and passed this bill many years ago. But the opposition was creating a war, and in the good discretion of Dr. Skerrit, has decided that let's have further discussion on it. And I appreciate that, and I applaud him for that, because I have listened carefully to the contributions of many of our citizens, and I am pleased to know that they all, are giving their input and encouraging that we move in the direction that will assist our citizens in making the right decision. On the issue of whether the Prime Minister should last for 2 terms or it's foolishness. You want to set a date for something that already have a date? We know every 5 years is election. We don't need a date again. You know every 5 years is election. That has been custom for centuries. Since I was born, I learned that, and up to today I'm still learning that. So why should now there be you have to put a bar on how long a person can stay in office to call election. Election is on the discretion of the Prime Minister. It has always been so. And if for some reason things not working how the government's supposed to work and the Prime Minister feels that he wants to go back to the poll, it's his choice. He goes back to that's happening all over the world. Britain changed how many Prime Ministers in a little short time? In 45 days, bam, bam, they're changing because that's their choice. And so to come and put a time limit on when a Prime Minister should call election or call election, I don't see no need for that because, as I said, the 5 years has already been set and we're accustomed to it, and I do believe, we should continue with that. And this idea of the bloated list is foolishness. There was a good friend of mine in Kenfield who actually looked at all of the elections, and I was trying to find it this evening there. All of the elections held, going back into the days. And what they found was that the percentage of persons who come in to cast their vote versus the number of persons registered was always around the same limit. And not that it was always 30,000 people registered and 30,000 people voted. It was always around the same percentage, and that remained the same even today. So, we have to accept that we have citizens who are not all living in Dominica. And Rudy Douglas said that this Labour Party the people in Dominica cannot develop Dominica on their own. And that we need our citizens, both here and abroad, to help with the development of Dominica. And by that he said that this Dominica Labour Party will afford a chance to all of our citizens to participate and vote in our election. And we must continue to maintain that as Labour rights and ensure that we do not let the minority determine what the future of this country should be. I want to end by saying that I commend the observers for being here with us. And I do hope, like they have observed within our elections, that it has always been free and it has always been fair, and that there is no need for us to have reform only, and this is the president of the UWP, only with the intention of removing persons' names on the list who has a right to be on the list. I think that this is foolishness. We are advancing and we should not decrease right now. Now is time to move forward, not time to go backward. And I fully support this move by the government to have this consultation and to ensure that we do it in a manner that will respect each other's views, but at the end of the day, let common sense prevail. Whatever we do, it must make things easier at all times for our citizens to vote. Get rid of that fingerprinting. Nobody wants that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will make my contribution on the radio where I have a chance here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albert. I believe we only have one more contributor. Okay, we'll take our final round. So we have Ms. Paul and Ms. Oh, we have two Ms. Pauls who would like to speak. Did we have anyone else? These are the only two. Okay, we'll take the three more. Ms. Rosalind Paul and then Ms. Caesarina Paul, and we'll have one more. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and let me say good night to all of you here, including our observers, the Prime Minister and Cabinet. What we are doing here is so very important, the consultation. I think we were making a mistake when we decided to go to Parliament some time ago, because what would be happening, or whatever changes we would be making, whatever legislation we would be putting in place, I do not think it would reflect the true voices and intention of the majority of the people. So the consultation that we're having now is very timely and needed, and it prevented us from making a grave mistake, what I think would be a grave mistake. Because what we are discussing here is really speaking to the rights of people. The rights of people. We cannot overemphasize that it is. People fought to vote. So we should be fighting to facilitate the voting process for all of us who have a right to vote. And in this era of modern technology, we should be using modern technology to facilitate people voting from wherever they are, once they are Dominicans. As Dominicans, we contribute to the development, it has been said, in many ways that we contribute to the development of the country. And when you speak about people's rights, we must think of equity. Case in point, if we say that Dominicans should be here over a 5-year period for at least 50 to 90 days, we are already probably barring the people who only have 2 weeks holiday annually. We are, or we may be barring the people who cannot afford to buy a ticket to come to Dominica for some reason. We may be barring people if for certain health circumstances they cannot be here, yet they contribute to the country. So I am thinking and I'm believing and I'm reflecting the position of so many people that we should not just remove people from the voters list. And even doing the re-registration and confirmation process, this is going to be very tedious. It is going to be very expensive. It is going to be very intensive to go. And all over the world, we have Dominicans everywhere to do this reconfirmation, re-registration process. Maybe it can be done, but it is going to be very challenging. So why should I be removed from a voters list and now I have to come back and re-register or confirm that? So I am not for that. I am for perhaps having a national ID card, because we keep saying about passport and driver's license, but not everyone may have that. But not everyone may have a passport, not everyone may have a social security card, not everyone may have a driver's license. However, if we are going to spend money, we should go for a national ID card that you can use throughout the 5 years, that you do not have to use once every 5 years, and possibility of, as we get older, we may misplace this card, and we have other forms of ID. So I am for the national ID card, but I'm also for alternative IDs if you come to vote and you cannot find that card. So these are some of the points that I want to make, and to just probably support the fact that we should not disenfranchise people. And what we're getting from all of those consultations is that we should refrain from just removing people from the voters list. The removal of dead people is a continuous process, and I think things are already in place to ensure this is done. We can strengthen for that and to make sure that dead people are removed. But that's what I would support in terms of cleansing of the list.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paul. We appreciate your contribution. Ms. Paul, again.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Honorable Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, and also the observers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm very happy for this opportunity to just share my own thoughts on this process of electoral reform or electoral modernization, as we've been using as well. I want to first of all state that there seems to be clearly a level of distrust existing within the whole electoral process, distrust in various pockets of our society, and clearly that's probably what brought us to this point tonight. Whether it is valid, whether it is not, I don't have the empirical evidence, but what I do know is it's existing. And so I'm happy that we have come to this point where people can express their thoughts, their ideas on the whole fact that all of us have been endowed with the right to vote, and we want to ensure that when it's done properly, that everybody will be happy, hopefully, at the end. Or if not happy, but hopefully everybody will get to the point of accepting, okay, my party didn't win, and I concede. I think the fact that we've not had that experience of people conceding as post an election has also caused a level of distrust in our society. And we have seen where post-election, campaign almost continues within the society. Is it healthy? We might say yes, because we are a political people. Everybody should be concerned about the politics, but we can also say to some extent that it has a level of not so good an impact, you could say, on the society, in that it really sets us apart. It divides us tremendously. I think young people need to have more faith in and confidence in our electoral process, and I am concerned that, again, the Commonwealth values, we are the Commonwealth. People even use it derogatory, if you ask me, or maybe in a funny term, oh, in the Commonwealth, as if it is negative. But we use the term Commonwealth of Dominica, and the Commonwealth, being called the Commonwealth of Dominica and being part of the Commonwealth as well, gives us the responsibility to embrace certain values, Commonwealth values, things like consensus, things like democracy, things like respect for diversity. And I'm afraid that if we do not get this particular process correct, then we will continue to probably have a society that might be losing in speed those values. And it's not just within political realm, but within other social realms as well. We can see it, where our young people may choose to end a quarrel by ending the life of the next person, rather than finding a way to talk about it, find a solution, and let us prevent the actual cutoff of a person's life. So this is what I'm talking about when I say that it can be perpetuated in the broader society that within which we live. So we must ensure that we never lose the joy and freedom of exercising our franchise. And I'm speaking here not just for Caesarina, but for every Dominican. I am concerned when I hear things like, if a person does not vote for 2 consecutive elections, that their names should be wiped out of the voters list. I think this is crazy. I think this is very unfair, and I don't think it is right. I think we must respect that a person has a choice whether he or she decides to go to the polls or not. What it does, however, is it places a greater responsibility on every politician, on every person, on every party, every politician who offers himself or herself to serve the society, to serve the constituency, to give the person a reason to want to go to the poll to put a vote in for him or her. I think it's important that we respect that right of the person. I don't feel that I want to go and vote because ABC. And then we have a responsibility as well to educate, and I'm happy that many young people are here, young people about the value of the vote. How comes we got to vote in the first place? And women especially, franchise, exercising our franchise, female suffrage, that was fought for, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies, we must never allow anyone to deprive us of that right. It was fought for by many people. There were people, women in the world, different parts of the world, and even here, who could not vote long ago. And now we have that right. And I do not think in any part of the world that anyone should be deprived of that right. No woman, no man. But tonight I'm speaking for the ladies because, hey, so you get the point. But the point I'm making is, truly, we should not think about striking somebody's name off the list because they chose not to vote. I think we must give them reasons to vote. We must educate them on the value of the vote, where it came from, why we should vote, and how much your vote is so important. Because that one vote can determine the government. That one vote can determine whether he or she becomes your parliamentary representative or not. That one vote gives you a voice that you can speak in the public or about matters that affect you in society. Now, when you don't vote, how you want to talk? All right, so I want to also mention that we are becoming more diverse as a society. And I'm saying that because I remember post-Hurricane Maria, right here at Portsmouth, being a part of the Disaster Management Committee, we had a situation where we had to quickly run a register of individuals within the entire town. It was a massive undertaking. We had to segment ourselves and go to various areas and get the names of people. And we found that there were many people who are not born Dominicans, who are not Dominicans, but they resided in our communities, and some of us didn't even know them. And so let us not take it for granted that we know everybody. I've heard it. Typically, we're a small place. We know everybody, but we don't. Don't tell me that you have not seen a strange guy or lady walking in the community and say, hey, who is that one? Hey, where they from? I don't know that person. Let us bear that in mind. And so I'm saying I don't know what's the best one, but we do need some level of identification in going to the polls so that somebody can say, this is Caesarina, this is that person, and guaranteed that person can vote once. So we have to fix it and ensure that we don't take it for granted that we know everybody, because we do not know everybody. We might see a strange person and realize, I really did not know that person. So ID is vital. I heard a suggestion last evening from someone that said that it should be mandatory for the media, some media houses, to allow people or parties to have access. I think it's specifically to radio stations. I want to personally say that I think if a person has a private entity, that they have a right to choose whether they want to allow A, B, C, or D party to access their radio station. What do we do with the Voice of Life, the Catholic, Dominican Catholic radio station, and these radio stations? Are we going to say to them too that you must allow X party to come and do a campaign stuff on your radio station? Is it going in accordance with their value system? Is it going in accordance with what it is they believe? Are we trying to now trade upon the belief of people and their value? We cannot always control what other people might say on a platform, and what someone might say may not necessarily give or be in accordance with or complement then what these people may believe. And so I think it's very important that we respect the rights of a private entity and do not tread upon that in any way, shape, or form. And besides, we have technology. It is on our sides. Last evening, I listened to the president of the National Youth Council. He spoke quite eloquently about e-governance and all the various things that can be put in place for people to utilize the technology that exists in order to promote the messages. So let us utilize them and respect the fact that there are some private entities and we should not tread upon their grounds. That's my personal point of view on that. So finally, because I know it's pretty late and people have to go far, I want to say, I think I said everything that I possibly wanted to say tonight, except I will reiterate the importance of respecting the vote of each person. I do not think people's names should be removed from the voters list, except if they are dead. That's the only time I think someone's name should be removed from the list. A person's right to vote must never be tampered with. That's my view. I don't think it's right. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair, and I pray that this process will create a greater level of trust in our society, not just for this phase, but especially post-election, that we will have a warmer, so to speak, society where we can all band together and be happy as a people and not be so divided and bitter post-election as if we become enemies. It's not healthy. We need a better environment as it relates to politics in Dominica. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paul, for this perspective. So we only have 2 more speakers. We do realize that it is late, and so there's a gentleman in the middle here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be very brief because it's getting late, but I think this is what I call democracy. You know, when persons come, everybody can be given a chance to participate in a process like that. This is very important. But I have a very serious concern. I think it carries some legal implication. I'll say that because we have to be very careful when we're going about removing persons on the list. I'll tell you what happened recently, just before an election. And that person was denied being able to vote. Now, 2 people existed in the same community, in the same constituency, same name, same surname. One person requested transfer. The other person did not. Now, the 2 names were affected. So one name was just deleted from the list. And this is very serious. So that's why I wanted to bring that to the fore. So I'm saying that again, that's why I listened to Mr. Joseph Label, and I think, although I don't support voter ID card as a mandatory card, I would support it as an additional or support identification card. Not mandatory because it will deprive some people from voting. So I was saying, really, we really need to be guided accordingly into that process. Just briefly. Thank you.
Thank you for your brief contribution. I believe there was one young lady at the back with a cap. I'm not sure if you still want to speak, so you'll be our final speaker.
Okay, good night, everybody. Very short. One of my points is I do not feel, I am Sharita Leblanc, Collier constituency. I do not feel campaign finance legislation makes no sense for Dominica. I do not agree that the Treasury should give any political party or candidates money for elections. I do not know as a young person when we got to this point, but it's some very, like, I'm disappointed that I used to know that before, after an election is called, we build, we move on, and we build Dominica. Now, it's like politics every day, a fight every day. Like, at this point, I don't understand what's going on as a young person. Like, how do we, my belief is opposition should come together and work to build our country. But it's a fight, and now I feel everything that is arising is because it's destruction for Dominica. Like, when did we get to this point? And I feel my other point is, I do not think we should prevent anybody living overseas from voting. My family all live overseas. Love election time. My aunts were nurses in Dominica and had to move when workers was in party. So all you telling me today, they are nurses paying their nurses license in Dominica, paying their loans in Dominica, build their homes in Dominica, and when election time come, they can't vote. And at this point, I feeling like, if my family can't vote, I can't vote. Do not take our freedom from us. I feel this is what is being done. Do not take our freedom as Dominicans from us. Our families do everything here. They come in once, 2, 3 times a year. They come, they party, they go back. Do not allow that to happen to us. Me, as a young person, I'll be very disappointed. And I fully agree to a national ID card, but not a voter's ID card. I am not for it.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's very good to get the perspective of the young people. So let me take this opportunity to thank every one of you who participated this evening in our first community consultation tonight. We had a very impressive showing from the north. You should give yourselves a round of applause. And I do want to thank you for your patience. I know that some of you have come from as far as Paybush, and some of you from as far as Capuchin and Colliho, and it's very late. But you have stayed here, and you have shared your feedback, and you have shared with us. So we want to also thank the American Canadian School of Medicine for allowing us to utilize this excellent venue for this consultation. And tomorrow night, we take the consultation to Cassie Bruce at the Regional Disaster Shelter from 6 p.m. And on Thursday, we will be in Wesley at the Northeast Comprehensive School, also from 6 p.m. I also finally would like to thank those who follow these consultations via the radio, online. A number of people have made a reference to previous sessions, which means people are very engaged. And for that to happen, I really want to thank the media team who is with us. They are here every night, and we are streaming live on the radio, on Facebook, on YouTube, and they're doing an excellent job. And all of the teams, everyone who is here and who participated in this consultation, we want to say thank you to you, of course, to the Honorable Prime Minister and the members of Cabinet who have been with us from the beginning, and the AG for the excellent presentation. So thank you very much. We do have some light refreshments for you in the dining room. I know that some of you would like to have some refreshments before you go home. So on your way out, you can have something to eat. Thank you very much to everyone, and please get home safely.